Carney speaks with Trump while Poilievre packs him in. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
Deeper than the headlines.
The answers you need to know.
This is Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
The first week of this election campaign is nearing its end, and it is ending much as it began, with Donald Trump looming large. The big news so far today is that Mark Carney spoke with President Trump on the phone today. In a posting on social media, Trump called his conversation with Prime Minister Carney productive and said that they agree on many things. Trump also said the two would be meeting after the election is over. This comes after Trump announced that tariffs would be hitting the auto sector. More details are expected to be revealed next week on Wednesday, April 2nd, a date Donald Trump has been calling Liberation Day. This has dominated the last 24 hours of the campaign. It promises to play a big role for the entirety of the campaign. Carney delivered remarks in Ottawa yesterday promising a forceful response to the latest tariff threat.
Let's be clear. We're all on the same page. We won't back down. We will respond forcefully. Nothing is off the table to defend our workers and our country. Now, to my fellow Canadians, I don't want to set unreasonable expectations. The road ahead will be long. There is no silver bullet. There is no quick fix. And I know and I understand that many are feeling anxious and worried about the future. Fundamental change is always unsettling. But I have every confidence in our country because I understand what President Trump does not. That we love Canada with every fiber of our being.
Carney then went on to outline how a Liberal government would develop an industrial strategy for Canada so Canada doesn't have to rely so much on the United States.
We announced the Strategic Response Fund and a series of other measures, but the core of that is to build out the auto sector and our auto supply chain in Canada as much as possible. Instead of autos going back and forth across the border 6 times and getting a tariff each time, we now know the level of that tariff, but integrating the supply chain here domestically, I'm using a fancy term, backwards integrating into steel and aluminum to help our steel and aluminum industries that are used and encourage that, backwards integrating further into critical metals and minerals that we're going to develop, and I listed a number of things that we did at the start that agreed with provinces and the development, working very closely with Premier Ford and others on development of the Ring of Fire rapidly, because that is all relevant to the competitiveness of our auto industry as well as good jobs there and other things. So we have a very clear strategy. We put $2 billion on the table for that. We're changing our federal procurement. We're only going to buy Canadian cars, 40,000 vehicles that we buy in federal procurement. You will see a lot more of that.
Also on Carney's agenda today, a meeting with the premiers, and then a news conference in about 3 hours from now where he may be asked about a report in today's National Post that claims Carney may have plagiarized parts of his PhD thesis from Oxford back in the 90s. The Conservative campaign continues its tour of the West Coast. Party leader Pierre Poilievre is having a campaign event and news conference within the hour in Nanaimo. The Poilievre campaign held a rally in Surrey last night. It attracted another huge crowd of several thousand supporters. Poilievre spoke for about 50 minutes, but it took him nearly 30 minutes before he mentioned Donald Trump during his speech.
Bring it home. Thank you. We're going to bring it home. We're going to bring home our jobs and a brighter future for our people, put our nation back in charge of its own future, and our nation will be strong and able to stand up against President Trump or any future American president, because we will be self-sufficient, self-reliant, and strong enough to stand on our own 2 feet.
Yesterday, during a campaign stop in Coquitlam, Poilievre was asked about new polling numbers that were shown to the Toronto Star. by a top advisor to Doug Ford. It showed the Conservative support is way behind the Liberals in Ontario. Corey Tenike, a former advisor and Ford campaign manager, told the paper Poilievre has a Trump problem.
The campaign director for Ontario Premier Doug Ford, Corey Tenike, says you sound like Donald Trump. So if Conservatives are saying that you sound too much like Donald Trump, how can you possibly stand up to the U.S. president?
Well, I'm the only one who will stand up to the U.S. president. I see that the president wants the Liberals back in because after a decade, a lost Liberal decade, with costs and crime up and the economy down under the American thumb, the president would love nothing more to keep the Liberals in power so that he can keep abusing our economy and taking advantage of Canada. The question Canadians will have to answer is whether they think the Liberals are owed a fourth mandate after they drove up costs and crime and weakened our economy, or whether it's time to put Canada first with a new Conservative government that will axe taxes, green-light projects, build homes, bring home the jobs so that we can stand up to the Americans from a position of strength.
The Poilievre campaign may face questions today about a news report from an outlet called The Breach. It's reporting that an uncle of Pierre Poilievre's wife, Anna Poilievre, came to Canada by walking across the border from the United States at Roxham Road in Quebec. The report goes on to say Mrs. Poilievre helped her uncle get permanent residency with the help of an unnamed MP. Poilievre hasn't been asked about that yet on the campaign trail, but a news reporter from the CBC asked the Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet for a comment. Blanchet was also asked about the Liberal surge in Quebec, which has come at the expense of the Bloc.
We're hearing this morning that Anna Poilievre's uncle fled Venezuela and crossed through Roxham Road into Canada. What do you make of that, given how much the Conservatives have criticized Ottawa and how they've handled the refugee crisis of asylum seekers coming into Canada?
I will ask you as a friend to send me all of those informations because I do not know about it. I'm sorry.
Okay. And looking at opinion polls this week so far, they have not shifted in your favor at the start of this campaign. Is it your hope that Mark Carney just keeps making mistake after mistake, or do you have another strategy to get ahead? And if so, what is it?
I do not have a good day for my Canadian friends. I haven't seen those polls either. However, I would tend to tell everybody, stop watching the board. You're missing a good game on the ice.
The NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is campaigning in Toronto today. He's promoting the NDP's platform on affordable housing. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
No question goes unasked or unanswered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio.
With our expert in communications, political communications, and leadership, Barry McLoughlin, president of TLC, Transformational Leadership Consultants. Barry lectures at the Telfer School of Management at the University of Ottawa and at the MBA program at the Shannon School of Business at Cape Breton University. You can also read Barry's Substack. Welcome back.
It's great to be with you, Rob.
Yeah, it's great to hear from you, Barry. I'd like to get your take just on the latest news, because Mark Carney and Prime Minister Mark Carney and U.S. President Donald Trump spoke today. This is the posting on Truth Social from the U.S. President. I just finished speaking with Prime Minister Mark Carney of Canada. It was an extremely productive call. We agree on many things, and we will be meeting immediately after Canada's upcoming election to work on elements of politics, business, and all other factors that will end up being great for both the United States of America and Canada. Thank you for your attention to this matter. What do you think?
Well, finally, we're being treated with some respect here. That is quite a positive thing for Mark Carney. If he'd called him Governor Carney, and then, that would have just continued, and I think would have reflected, he would have had to own some of the piece of that he wasn't able to turn around even the relationship. So I think that was a very positive thing for him in his campaign. A little exceeded expectations, let's say. It's the first time he said something decent about Canada and about the positivity of moving forward. So I think it was solidly good news for him today.
Okay. I told Barry I'm going to ask you this every week until Election Day when you're with us on Fridays.
Mm-hmm.
Who won the week, Carney or Poilievre?
Well, it's not a clear-cut thing, but I think you've got to give it to Carney because he got to play his role as Prime Minister yesterday, to meet with the Cabinet Committee on Canada-U.S. relations, to be in that role of Prime Minister, to meet with the premiers today, to have spoken on the phone with President Trump. Those are all very positive things. He rolled out several of his initiatives earlier in the week. So you'd have to give him very solid. It's not that it's not that Pierre Poilievre did a bad job. No, he didn't. In fact, he was trying to make strides on the substance of what he's calling for, the GST kind of things, the TFSA, expanding that. He was doing a number of tangible economic oriented things. I think that was very important for him to get his initiatives out there. Yes, he did speak up for Canada and against what was going on with the president and with the tariffs. So it's not that he mishandled it. It's that he basically, though, was taken off his game on a couple of fronts and, really became problematic, I think, for him.
All right, let's talk about a couple of things, because Mark Carney's going to meet the media later today. Poilievre, within the hour, is quite likely going to be taking reporters' questions. Mm-hmm. Let's say you're Mark Carney. There's a story in the National Post today, very lengthy story. He may have plagiarized parts of his PhD thesis from Oxford. If you're Mark Carney, what do you say to that?
Well, I think you have to be very forthright about it. The president of Harvard really lost her job because of this exact thing when she was a PhD student. It's not a minor thing to people. They think if you lie about that, you'll lie about anything else. So I think he's got to have a forthright statement. Had he made some errors in it of annotating properly his research and so on, he should admit to that. He should say what he did with regard to it. I think if he doesn't, then he's still skirting it. But if you make big, shocking news about it, that would be a problem. It is taking off his game a little bit. He is fortunate in a way that it's competing with a far more powerful story, and that is what we're doing with regard to the tariffs. So I think that it's in terms of timing. If you're going to have bad news, it's not a bad thing to have it on a day in which there's a lot of other really important things going on.
Okay. So a CBC News reporter asked Yves-François Blanchet about this story from The Breach about an uncle of Anna Poilievre coming to Canada by way of Roxham Road, basically coming into the country illegally, and her helping him gain permanent residency. So that leads me to believe if they're asking Blanchet about that, they're going to ask Poilievre about it at some point. What would you say?
Well, I think, first of all, it's fortunate that it's her uncle and not her father. I'd say that, point number one.
Okay.
Point number two, he has to own his own, what he did and why he did it and so on. I think she can't run away from it. He can't run away from it on her behalf. But I think, he's got to be as forthright as possible about it and to go then through the proper channels afterwards. You may as well admit it. I think it's the ducking and running and pretending it didn't happen is often far worse than the deed itself.
Yeah. It's never the original act. It's always kind of the cover up, if you will, Barry.
Absolutely.
That gets you,
and,
right?
Every day that you're dealing with these issues,
you're not on message, right?
You're not on message. That's part of the reason why I didn't make him the winner this week. He spent too long trying to deal with why aren't you getting a security clearance? And why didn't you?
Right. Well, we'll talk about the need for a Poilievre pivot when we come back with Barry McLoughlin, the president of TLC, Transformational Leadership Consultants.
Critical thinking is not dead.
Now you know with Rob Snow.
Returns on News Radio.
Back with Barry McLoughlin from TLC, Transformational Leadership Consultants. I really like your take on this line of thinking, because a lot of people are saying Poilievre needs to pivot. He needs to be a lot more forceful on Trump. He has too many messages. He's not focused enough on the Trump threat. What do you think of that view?
Well, see, the Trump threat is there for all Canadians. It's what are you going to do about it is really the issue there. And do you get what's going on? So he certainly has done his share of that. Both, he and Singh have done that, of course, as well as Carney. Carney being in the natural favorite position because he is the prime minister. So I think that he's done his best. Notice he was kind of not directly embracing it as much as he could and should, and he has really taken hold of that much stronger this week in particular. So he needs to continue that, because people do want to know, so what? We get it's a threat. What are you doing? What are you doing? What will you do? What will you do differently? So he's got to make sure that, and you notice he is trying to connect the dots to the affordability issue, to the investments that are necessary, to the cost of living for Canadians. He's always trying to connect the dots. He can't abandon that, but he's got to make sure it's a coherent, seamless whole, that we get what he would do as Prime Minister in this really unprecedented threat that we're all facing.
And I mean, it's an election campaign. It's a battle to the finish. And I mean, you listen to a Mark Carney rally. I mean, he's not sparing any attacks on his political opponent. You do need to go after your opponent. I mean,
absolutely.
Right?
Everybody says this in campaigns, but it has to be a double-edged sword. One edge of the sword is what you're going to do. The other edge is chop back on what the other party has been doing.
This is why I'm better than the other person, right?
You absolutely have to do that.
Okay. You've been part of a lot of election campaigns. You've followed a lot of election campaigns. Do you ever remember one like this? Does it remind you of any previous elections in your lifetime, Barry?
Not exactly.
No?
I did the Mulroney campaign and all the candidates 84 and 88. I think the 88 campaign was very interesting. It didn't start off as a free trade election, but quickly became one. And the whole thing was free trade. And Turner rose from the ashes. They were down to 40 seats, and he kind of rose up. He fought. He kind of did a really good job in the debate. That became the real test between the two men. And, I think Turner salvaged his reputation in the public mind, pointing out a lot of the dangers of free trade by definition. Obviously, the Conservatives did win, progressive Conservatives in those days did win, but it was a real pitched battle that nobody had entirely anticipated would be, but it definitely became that.
Yeah. That morphed around a single issue, right?
Yeah.
It really was a single issue election, that election.
Yeah, and what was interesting was that, usually when you're the incumbent prime minister, you get to wear all the sins of the first term. But largely it wasn't about any of those things. It really became all about free trade. And Mulroney himself had pivoted incredibly on free trade. He was opposed to it back in 84, but gradually began to realize that, and he had a McDonald report and so on that really said we must go free trade. We need to have a bigger pie to get the slice of that. And so that was a big shift on his part, but that became the single issue campaign.
Okay. Well, it's great to hear from you today, Barry. Look forward to our conversation next week. We'll see what the state of the race is 2 weeks in. Thank you again for today.
Great
pleasure, to hear from you. Yeah, from TLC, Transformational Leadership Consultants. That's Barry McLoughlin.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
He's been minding Ottawa's business all week long. Tom Korski is back with us, the managing editor of Blacklock's Reporter. Welcome back,
Rob.
Great to hear from you today. Tom, how is the government being funded right now that the election campaign is underway?
It's fascinating, isn't it? They run out of money on Monday at midnight. What will happen? Who will pay the police or the meat inspectors? What will happen at the prisons? And they thought of that. It's a very obscure law that under it's a clause of the Financial Accountability Act that permits, they're called special warrants. And it means Cabinet can, by order, cover a bill, but only if they deem it urgent. So no shenanigans or pork barreling, only to cover the police, the Navy, and the prisons, etc. And you say, well, why would they ever come back to Parliament? Parliament thought of that too. They know all the angles. When you're inside, they know all the angles. They said, no, you must report to the taxpayers of Canada within 30 days on what you have spent. And when the election is over, you must go back to Parliament. This means that Parliament will sit into the summer. They don't enjoy that. It almost never happens. And you must pass those money bills.
They won't be happy about that at all. They won't be happy about that at all.
They will not enjoy that.
Right. So they'll have to sit through the summer and I guess pass some supply bills to supply the government with money?
Wouldn't take all summer, but they have to pass ordinary budget bills so that your MP can debate it. And as you mentioned, the summertime, I think it was Johnny MacDonald said, The difference between Ottawa and the flaming pits of hell in the summer was a thin piece of paper. No one enjoys it.
Okay. All right. Now, I call this news you can use because there are new rules about checks that bounce, non-sufficient funds, and charges that can be put on by banks. What are the new rules?
Cabinet's capped at a $10 charge. They're typically $45 or more. Most of in fact, all the banks. It's a big moneymaker for them. The feds estimate the banks make over $500 million a year just on these NSF fees. They've capped them at $10. Wow. My favorite part, though, was just in case you ever wondered who really calls the shots in this town. Even the Department of Finance in their legal notice said they just expect banks to stick it to you some other way. How did they put it? Due to loss of NSF fee revenue, banks may raise fees in other areas such as account maintenance fees. Watch for that. Watch for your minimum account balance charge to go through the roof because of this order.
Oh, I see. Okay. I will be watching for that, especially the day before payday. But I was shocked to read this. I mean, according to the latest data, and this is from the Department of Finance, it's about a third of Canadians are hit with an NSF fee, at least once a year. That seems like a big number to me.
Absolutely. And the charges are huge. When the department asked the banks for specific data, and the bankers said, drop dead, we're not telling you how much. So they had to estimate it based on figures from comparable markets in the United States where they have more disclosure. Can you imagine? My favorite figure, though, this is from the chief bank inspector. He's called the Superintendent of Financial Institutions. They estimate all those bank service fees. What are they worth? He came up with $7 billion a year. That's service fee. That's calling it generous. $7 billion annually. Unbelievable.
Tom Korski is with us. He's the managing editor at Blacklock's Reporter. He's with us every Friday. Let's talk about homelessness in Canada, because there are new estimates about the number of Canadians living in homeless shelters. What's the latest on that, Tom?
Well, they come up with a figure up 12% annually. These are the most recent figures you can get from the Department of Infrastructure that oversees aid programs for the homeless in Canada. Federal aid. By the way, the aid is expensive. It's over $500 million a year. And despite that, they find a 12% increase in the number of shelter users, 118,000 minimum.
118,000 people. Wow.
Absolutely.
Okay.
They use a shelter at some point in time. They see shelter capacity has gone up 13%. You say, well, where does the money go? Homeless programs, very expensive, very uneven results. And when it comes to the population count, even StatsCan says, look, if these people don't have an address, it's very, very hard to come up with an accurate count.
Okay. Tom Korski is with us. He's the managing editor at Blacklock's Reporter. Back with Tom Korski, the managing editor at Blacklock's Reporter. Let me ask you, Tom, as somebody who has covered a lot of news conferences from politicians in their day, have you ever known one to run with machine-like precision? Like when they say the news conference is going to be at 1 o'clock, it actually starts at 1 o'clock with military-like precision? Or is it just a tradition that politicians are late when they want to do news conferences?
No, I think it's gotten worse. They actually did used to run on time. Yeah,
really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think deadlines were very tight in the old days, right? And if you went on, that's it. You weren't making a newspaper. You weren't making the slot, and you weren't going to make the evening newscast or the national hookup on radio. Deadlines were really deadlines. If you crossed the line, you're dead.
Yeah. A lot of the papers had two editions back in those days, right? They would have a morning edition and a afternoon edition, right?
Oh, that 9 o'clock, it hung over you. It was like a guillotine. At 9 p.m., that's when the presses had the role to get the newspapers out for the 2 a.m. country trucks, the country deliveries. Yesterday, Rob.
Yeah, you got to get on the supper hour news. You want to get on the national news. You want to be in the paper in the morning. Start your news conference on time. The only reason, I mean, Trudeau is famous for being late. Justin Trudeau. Yesterday, there were supposed to be news conferences at 1:30 Eastern. Both of them started an hour and a half late. Mr. Paul, an hour and a half late. I mean, can you imagine Mr. Poilievre said, and the reporters have nothing to do but to kind of stand around and twiddle their thumbs and doom scroll on their phones and just kind of wait for everybody. It's it's amazing they want to run the country. Just put your news conference on time. So listen, let's go down memory lane. Mark Carney, back in February of 2022, it's February 7th of 2022. I remember reading this column. I was doing a radio show in Ottawa during the Freedom Convoy protest, was covering it like by the minute. He wrote an op-ed in the Globe and Mail calling the Freedom Convoy protesters, what they were doing, he called it sedition. He called it treachery. He defended the seizing of bank accounts and said that they have to be, everybody who participated in the Freedom Convoy protest has to be punished to the fullest extent of the law. I gather Mark Carney is facing some questions. What do you think about how the Freedom Convoy, all these years later, what are your reflections on the Freedom Convoy protests? What's he saying?
Well, he didn't want to talk about it. It was like he had amnesia. I don't really look. He said, I've only been a politician for a few days, but he was pretty political, as you mentioned, 3 years ago. The striking part about his sedition commentary was, number one, what he wrote in it that was completely inaccurate and would not meet the muster of a high school essay, but the reaction from the RCMP that we saw months later in internal emails in which they were ridiculing this guy for this goofy reference in his commentary. What did he say when he said, you're right, absolutely right, he said, it's time to end the sedition in Ottawa. And I'm quote him, that's a word I never thought I'd use in Canada. It means incitement of resistance to or insurrection against lawful authority. End of quote. Problem, that's not what it means in Canada. He had cribbed a Google definition off a Merriam-Webster dictionary from the United States. As the Mounties noted in their hilarious internal emails, under the criminal code in Canada, you must use force. The key bit is use of force. It's not enough to say, Parliament's getting on my nerves, I'm honking my horn. You must implicitly resort to violence. And the Mounties said, yeah, you know what? Honking horns, double parking, that's not making it. Carney, no wonder he doesn't want to talk about it.
Quote from, again, in the Globe and Mail, those who are still helping to extend this occupation, that's a favorite of the Ottawa elite, occupation. Those who are still helping to extend this occupation must be identified and punished to the full force of the law. Drawing the line means choking off the money that financed this occupation. Again, many Canadians who were amongst the initial donors were likely well-meaning. Perhaps they were unaware of the convoy's objectives. Like many in positions of authority in Ottawa, they didn't take them seriously. But by now, anyone sending money to the convoy should be in no doubt you are funding sedition. Foreign funders of an insurrection interfered in our domestic affairs from the start. And it was subsequently, there was very little money coming from foreign countries to
almost none
support the Freedom Convoy.
No. Parliament committee hearings determined it was all chump change, $20 or less, and from Canadian donors. Number of people charged with sedition, 0. All the charges were typically mischief, which is a kid with a can of spray paint doing graffiti on a bridge work. Rob, you know this. This is a subject no one can discuss in Ottawa with many, many Ottawans. You talk to Ottawans to this day, they talk like they experienced the bombing of...
Oh, yeah. I was taking the phone calls. I was doing open line radio. Back in those days, and I heard from supporters of the convoy protest, but I also heard from people who said, I want the army in there, and I want them cleared out.
Yeah, it was not a great moment for civil liberties. It was not.
So We like to, with Tom's help, keep you up to date on the frequent flyers within the bureaucracy. And you've got a new one today. High-ranking official at the Bank of Canada racking up the air miles. Tom, tell us more.
Laurie Renison, Deputy Managing Director, she burned through $262,000 in travel expenses, all business class flights. She went from Brasilia to Marrakesh, Sao Paulo. My favorite was she went to Paris 6 times. 5 times was in the springtime. Now, Rob, I've never experienced springtime in Paris. I understand they make movies about it. I bet it's pretty.
Yes.
But Laurie went 5 times. She really enjoyed herself. Problem, this had occurred when the cabinet had said we really have to tighten discretionary travel for the sake of taxpayers. And my goodness, it was after the bank had said we must reduce our carbon footprint. Quote, end of quote. Oh,
Don't you love it?
Oh, why, Laurie? Why?
We'll always have Paris. Okay. Thank you, Tom Korski.
Thank you,
Talk to you next week. See what the week brings. Yep. Bye-bye.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues
on News Radio.
Here with David Smith on a Friday. We made it, Dave.
We did.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, again, we made
Flew
it.
by, I have to tell you.
Yeah, it's true.
That's one thing about election campaigns. There's something going on every hour when there's a federal election campaign happening, and when you're in the news media, then that just makes the day go by super fast. If you're ever looking for a podcast for our show, now you know with Rob Snow, we have a new mobile app that'll help you hear our show when you want to. Listen to the podcast, listen live. It's called the Seeker app, Seekr. All kinds of exclusive audio you won't hear anywhere else. News, music, sports. You can download Seeker for iOS or Android. That's Seeker, spelled Seekr. And now you know with Rob Snow is on Spotify and Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. How's the weather in our nation's capital today, David?
It's fair. It's holding for now. But the bad stuff is coming. It's going to be, by the time we're up tomorrow morning, well, even later tonight, actually, the snow is going to start around 10 p.m. And we could get 10 to 15 tomorrow, snow,
10 to 15 centimeters of snow tomorrow.
Well,
right?
That's what the special weather statement says, but who even knows? I mean, it could be ice pellets, could be freezer, wintry mix, like all that sounds.
Yes, a wintry mix. It's like snow and then freezing rain, and then everything turns to rain.
Yeah,
I have a little kind of snow machine. I have a little old ATV, and it has a plow on the front.
Yeah,
and I took the plow off.
Oh, you shouldn't have done
last week, right? And I just wonder if I cursed myself by doing that.
Yeah, this is why this is happening.
I have to stick that thing back on there. I'm not going to be happy, Dave. Every season, I take a picture on my phone. First snowfall of the season. And so I looked back, November 24th. It started snowing here November 24th. And now it's like March 20th. 5 months is enough for me of snow. Like, come on. Like, I've had so enough of snow. I wonder if it's spring anywhere. I mean, we're below zero in the nation's capital. It's like +3 in Halifax today. It's -7 in Calgary, and like 4 degrees for our friends in Kitchener. So our friends in Kitchener are the weather winners today.
Let me run this by you.
And all that takes is +4.
+4. Let me run you this by you. The special weather statement was updated just before we got onto the air for the capital region.
Right.
Freezing rain on Sunday. What? They have it says here, special weather statement for what? Prolonged period of freezing rain possible, significant ice accretion of 5 to 10 millimeters of ice, power outages, slippery surfaces, and broken tree branches from ice buildup. That's great.
Oh, yeah.
That's just great.
Won't just be broken tree branches. It'll be broken bones with everything. Yeah. So I was getting ready for that. A couple of big bags of salt to get ready for, what will be a day full of freezing rain. I hope this is the end of it. I really hope this is the end of it. I mean, I remember one time in the nation's capital in Ottawa, when spring came so early, I was golfing by the end of March. Like the golf course, it was kind of soggy, but there's a one course in Ottawa that always opens early, and we were out there. It was like March, probably around now, March 27th.
Right around this time.
28th.
I've played golf like 27th, 28th of March, but not this year.
Not this season. No way. No way. All right, Friday Free for All Talkback is coming up right after the news. Enough of our weather woes. We're open line, open topic on Friday. If you want to talk about the election, I'd love to talk about the election. We have lots to talk about there. If you want to talk about anything else, we'll follow your lead. That's how we roll on a Friday during Talkback. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. It's News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. And today, it is the Friday Free for All. And that's our favorite day of the week around here. We don't come up with the topics on Fridays. We've been doing that all week. So today, it's your turn. What's on your mind? What do you want to talk about? If you want to talk about something that's been in the news, I mean, there's news every hour on the hour this week. If you want to talk about something that you think should be in the news, you feel free to raise it here, whatever it happens to be. We are tuned in. We are here to listen, and we are ready to go. The call-in line is 1-833-668-2577. You should save that number in your phone, 1-833-668-2577. And if you've never called before, just mention that to our call screener, and we will make your call a priority. Let's go to Sharon. Sharon is calling from Bell's Corners in Ottawa.
Hi, Rob.
Holy smokes. Sharon,
Nice
let me tell you a little bit. Well, it's great to talk to you, Sharon. Now, Sharon used to call Open Line Radio in Ottawa to the legendary Lowell Green when he was on CFRA, and then I took over from Lowell, and you called me there, and then you called me on 1310, and now here you are calling me today here. That's very cool, Sharon.
Yes.
Yeah. So what do you want to talk about?
Well, why not talk about the election?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. I mean, I just cannot believe that the people in Canada are dumb enough that they're actually going to even think about giving the Liberals a chance. You asked before, is our sovereignty at risk? With Trump in power, everything is at risk. But part of the reason why our sovereignty is at risk is because what the Liberals did to Canada in the last 10 years. You know, they have done nothing good for Canada. They've spent money like crazy, funded all kinds of things that none of us agree with, carbon tax, you know, on and on it goes. And yet people are still willing to even think about bringing the Liberals back. It just boggles my mind. It really does. And I wish I could meet Jagmeet Singh, because I'd try to give him a boot in the rear end. He could have brought the Liberals down long ago, along with the Conservatives in the bloc, and we would have already been rid of them and give somebody else a chance. Of course I'm voting Conservative. I'm a Conservative. But if my Conservative Party had done what Trudeau and all his MPs and his advisors, like Carney and so forth, if they had done to this country what the Liberals had done, I'd have to vote against them. I'd have to say, I can't vote for a party that's done this to the country. So more than likely, most of the people that are listening to you have more of a conservative bent. But if any of them or even consider voting for Liberals, give your head a shake, for God's sake. Just because Trudeau's gone, all his MPs are still there that fully supported him, nodded their heads steady at everything he did, and Carney was there too, advising. So I just hope, election campaign, anything can happen, as we know.
Yeah.
And Trump is, of course, the issue right now that everybody wants to deal with. But it isn't the only issue. and Canada has to come back to be the country it was. I mean, we don't want to go
Sharon.
backwards. We want to go forward, but we want to be treated with respect. And we're not now. We're a joke.
Okay. I've got to wrap up our call there. The phone lines are jammed today, Sharon, but you haven't missed a beat. It's great to hear your voice today. Thank you so much.
Rob.
Yeah, Sharon calling from Ottawa today, a really loyal listener of mine for all the decades I've been doing talk radio. Is my 26th year. Let's go to Russ in High River. Hello, Russ.
Oh, I got to tell you, that lady is fantastic.
Yeah, she's wonderful. Yeah.
She's wonderful. Yeah. Hey, I only have one question. Remember way back in September when they paroled Parliament over the green fund, slush fund audit stuff? Why isn't that ever brought up? It's never even happened. It's like, I guess the sign is, well, that's in the past. That's what Liberals are saying now. All the Liberal, no, that's in the past. Let's go forward. Well, I'm telling you, why isn't it being brought up? It's I watched TV last night and I was watching Fox and I'm not a big Trump fan, but I watched Fox and I watched the part about the Doge and about well, you know what? We need a Doge in Canada. We need to clean
really?
house. Yeah. And well, I know everybody says, oh, really? Well, you know what? We need an outside auditor to go in and clean up because nobody listens to our existing auditor. It's like, oh, yeah, that's fine. Let's just get on. And I'd like to know how much, where all that money went from COVID and where all this green slush fund money went. That's all. I just don't understand how Canadians can be so blasé.
Well, they would, I think, the mood seems to be that things have shifted and there are, I guess, more pressing concerns right now. And it all has to do with the man in the White House and how we're going to deal with that.
If our pressing concerns aren't where our money's being spent, then I guess we don't have a problem in Canada. We don't have a tax problem in Canada. We don't have a shortage. The reason they're doing it in the States is because they're broke. Well, guess what? We're probably per capita worse off than Americans.
I'm not too sure about that, but I mean, $62 billion deficit kind of speaks to at least the previous government's management of the country's finances.
Over $1 trillion in debt.
Over $1 trillion, yeah. Over $1 trillion, yeah.
Yes,
okay,
so
got to run, Russ. Got to run. Thank you. Yep, jam-packed phone lines already, but when you hear someone hang up, that'll be your cue to call. It'll mean there's a free line. Hey, Norm in Dartmouth, what's on your mind today? Norm, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Well, I say good for Sharon, first off. I say good for her. I mean, what's on my mind is people are thinking about the economy and they're thinking about dealing with Trump and all that stuff, and they think that Carney's the best person to deal with Trump. Off his record, well, I would say if you look back at his Bank of Canada governor, he was there's a lot of unanswered questions there as exactly what he did do and what he was involved in, and then you look at Brexit. Brexit was a win for him. But was it a win for the British people? Because after 5 years, they're still wheeling and dealing over Brexit. They're still getting around it. And there's a lot of people who tell you that wasn't a win for them. And
yeah, but he wasn't supportive of Brexit, though. The key thing is he wasn't supportive of Brexit. He just kind of had to deal with it.
He's touting those wins, though. But are they really wins? I mean, he's certainly not touting any win for being financial advisor for Trudeau for 5 years, is he? I mean, and then you got Trump himself, and people say, Trump says this, Trump says that, and it's a big win today because Trump said, it was a good talk with Mr. Carney. Well, Trump has said that about anybody he's talked to. The media wasn't there, so can you believe that? I don't know. I think there's two things about Trump that are a constant, and that's his agenda and the big win. He wants the big win. He went after Freeland because he affected that, and if he's saying he'd rather deal with somebody than anybody else, he's thinking of a win for America. He's certainly not thinking about a win for Canada. And then you got our friends, the NDP. I mean, come on. Tom LeClaire telling him not to vote NDP. I mean, what's going on? I mean, if it wasn't for the NDP and the Liberals, Judge Ming Singh keeping Trudeau in power for all that time, well beyond its expiry date, this election would be a normal election it would be over policies and prosperity, and now it's about fear and uncertainty. I mean,
okay.
And I know.
And do you think that's being? Let me ask you, because we talked about this yesterday. Do you think that's all being blown out of proportion?
Sure it is being blown out of proportion.
Do you think so?
Because in the long run, Mr. Trump is going to have to deal with the American people. It doesn't matter who deals with Mr. Trump per se, because nobody's going to deal with Mr. Trump except the American people. They're the ones that are going to make it matter with Mr. Trump. I mean, honestly. I mean, you got all this stuff going on, and they talk about the conservatives how they don't like because they use the word sneaky. Come on, I know it's childish, but really, honestly, are you going to get a party because they talk about sneaky? I mean, the NDP and the Liberals, they're just as bad. They may not be as sound as childish, but they're just as bad. They've been using fear-mongering for years. They really have. I mean, the Liberals have been talking about conservatives are going to go after your pensions. They're going to go after your health. They're going to go after the LBDG. I mean, it's all fear-mongering. I mean, people should think. People, they make a lot of decisions off their emotions, and they really need to take some time to educate themselves a little bit. I mean, there's a lot of NDP, they're going to Liberal. And if they're going to Liberal because they actually think that Mark Carney is the best man for the job, good for them, good for their country.
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily they think Mark Carney is the best man for the job, but he's the man who can prevent Pierre Poilievre from becoming prime minister. Mr. Singh can't do that.
And if they're doing that just because of that, because it doesn't matter whether Poilievre would be the best man or not, then shame on them. Shame on them for affecting the future of millions and millions of Canadians. Shame on them. They're supposed to be the party.
Okay. All right, Norm. Gotcha. Got you loud and clear. Let's go to Sylvan Lake. Wade up next on the Friday Free For All. Hi, Wade. Hello, Wade.
Oh, hey. How are you doing?
I'm good, Wade. Thanks. What's on your mind today?
Well, I was just wondering, are you familiar with the report that came out from the House of Representatives Judiciary Committee on the sustainability shakedown?
I was reading about that. Yeah, I was. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I downloaded it or whatever, and Mark Carney's,
I can't say I've read the report. I've read news reports about it that Mr. Carney was called to the House Judiciary Committee to. And he had to answer questions. I gather this was some kind of in-camera session or behind closed doors about the Net Zero Banking Alliance, and because there are a group of Republicans or some Republicans, G-fans, thank you, who think that this was basically collusion in the banking sector to hurt the natural resources sector in the United States. Fair enough?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the transcription of his testimony is not in the report. You have to order that from, I guess, the House of Representatives or whoever. But I did see some snippets of the transcription of his testimony, and in his testimony, he states that he is a citizen of the UK. Now, this report is dated December of 2024, and it wasn't that long ago that they did that. So if he was under oath a citizen of the United Kingdom, what the hell is he doing being installed as the Prime Minister of Canada? And what's he doing saying all the stuff?
Well, he's also a Canadian citizen. He is a Canadian citizen, right?
Well,
he's a Canadian citizen, right?
Where does his family live?
As far as I know, they live in Ottawa, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I just wanted to ask if you were familiar with that report. I've read a lot of it, and
I have only read a few news. I've read a few news stories about it. Yeah, I've read a few news stories. I've basically told you everything I know about it. I'm not into the minutia in it in any way. When we come back, more of your phone calls. Friday Free For All, and Trump apparently just made some remarks about his conversation with Mark Carney. I haven't heard them yet, but we'll hear them together when we come back. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
So far, the big news of the day in the election campaign is that the Liberal leader, Mark Carney, Prime Minister Mark Carney, had a phone call with the U.S. President, Donald Trump. Donald Trump on Truth Social said it was extremely productive, agreed on many things. Curious, he said, we will be meeting immediately after Canada's upcoming election, kind of assuming that Mark Carney's going to win the election. But just moments ago at the White House, President Trump actually spoke about his phone call with Mr. Carney. I haven't heard this. Let's listen here.
Canada's Prime Minister says that they will be implementing retaliatory tariffs. You said if that were to happen, that you would be responding with large-scale tariffs. Will you be following through with that promise?
Well, absolutely. But we had a very good conversation. Mark called me today at 10 o'clock. We put out a statement. We had a very, very good talk. He's going through an election now, and we'll see what happens. But we have Liberation Day, as you know, on April 2nd, and I'm not referring to Canada, but many countries have taken advantage of us, the likes of which nobody even thought was possible for many, many decades, And, that has to stop. We're going to end up with a very good relationship with Canada and a lot of the other countries. Some we probably won't. It won't be so pleasant. But I think most countries are agreeing with me. They actually, many of them have actually apologized. They said, look, we have taken advantage. And I don't blame them as much as I blame the people that stood, in this case I can say the men, because so far they've been all men, haven't they? But the men that sat right there and behind the Resolute desk, mostly the Resolute desk, I don't know if you know, you have a choice of 7 desks. The Resolute is the one I like, but some chose other ones. But they sat right behind a desk right in this location, and they let our country be hurt very badly. But I didn't do that. But we had a very good talk, the Prime Minister and myself, and I think things are going to work out very well between Canada and the United States. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. On a first name basis, no less. He wasn't called the governor. In his statement, he called him Prime Minister Mark Carney. And as you heard there, called him Mark. So maybe you have some thoughts on that. I'd love to hear them today. It's a Friday Free for All Talkback. Wendy in Kitchener. Go ahead, Wendy. Hi there.
Hi.
Hi, Wendy.
How are you today?
I'm good, Wendy. What's on your mind?
The lady that was talking from Ottawa, she's 100%. I back her up.
Okay.
And now when you talk about what's going on with Trump and saying that we don't need to be worried about Trump. We have to worry about these liberals. It's the liberals that are why we're at the war now with the state.
Okay. But what if, it sounds like President Trump kind of likes Mark Carney. Is that a good thing?
So Mark Carney's fooled him now too?
Oh, is that what you think? Okay. All
yeah.
right. All right, Wendy. Thank you for your call.
To the truckers.
To the truckers. Okay. All right. Thank you, Wendy. Got to run. They're playing the music. The latest breaking news is coming up next. More of your calls. Pierre Poilievre's taking questions right now in Nanaimo, British Columbia. Is a sawmill in Nanaimo. Maybe play some of that for you as well. See what he's been saying today on the Hustings Day 6. Friday Free for All Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
It's Friday Free for All, open line, open topic. The election is dominating the discussion so far, of course. Just before the news, you heard from U.S. President Trump speaking in positive terms about a conversation that he had with Prime Minister Mark Carney today, the Liberal leader, calling him Mark, as though they're on a first name basis, that they're going to have another meeting after the election, but that he feels very good that there could be some kind of breakthrough with Canada and better relations with Canada. Although he said, Wednesday, there's still going to be tariffs on Wednesday. Pierre Poilievre, meantime, campaigning right now in Nanaimo, British Columbia. He's at a sawmill in Nanaimo, British Columbia. He was asked about what is being described as a change in tone from President Trump after this conversation with Mark Carney. Let's listen here.
And I know you haven't seen it yet because it just happened. The president's in the Oval Office, and he just said, we have Liberation Day on April 2nd. And I'm not talking about Canada, but many, many countries have taken advantage of us. Any thoughts on potentially a changing tone out of the White House?
Well, let's hope that there is a change in tone. We want to put an end to this crazy tariff chaos. We have the best trading relationship in the history of the world. Why not continue and grow that trading relationship as two separate sovereign nations? My message to President Trump is that true free trade without tariffs will allow both of our economies to separately grow stronger so that we can fund stronger militaries and more secure borders and make our continent safe against the real risks from overseas. That's the goal that we should all be working towards. And my goal will be to make Canada, regardless of what the Americans do, this has all been a wake-up call for us. By blocking pipelines and LNG plants and slow-rolling resource projects, capping our oil and gas sector, the Liberals have made us too reliant on the Americans. That will end. My government will repeal the entire carbon tax, the energy cap, the anti-pipeline law, C-69. We will bring the hundreds of billions of dollars back to our economy, and we will start selling between Canadians and overseas so that we are stronger, self-reliant, sovereign, to stand on our own 2 feet and stand up to the Americans. In other words, let's bring home the country that we knew and the country that we still love. Thank you very much.
Okay. Pierre Poilievre in Nanaimo, British Columbia, that just moments ago. Mr. Singh, the NDP leader, he was campaigning in Toronto today. Unfortunately, we just, for some reason, there does not seem to be any media coverage of Mr. Singh's event today in Ottawa. We could not find any media coverage. It's remarkable. The leader of the New Democrats can't get any media coverage of an event in like the center of the universe, Toronto. And Mr. Carney, in addition to having this phone call today with President Trump, is having a meeting with the premiers, a virtual meeting with the premiers. And then he has scheduled a news conference. He's in Montreal. And that news conference is supposed to start in about 2 hours from now. Right back to the phones. Just wanted to bring you up to date on everything that's happening on the hustings today. Steve in Fergus. Thanks for waiting, Steve.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, well, these are observations. I think hopefully our audience is long and wide. They can all hear. So first off, I'm thinking, Carney, unfortunately, I don't think he's done his time in Canadian Parliament, even question period or whatever. He's never done a thing like that. Probably wasn't allowed to, of course, because he wasn't Prime Minister at the time. However, I would say, the Blue Party, like Pierre and all those people, even including like Freeland and all this, they've all been at the debates. They've all been at the issues at hand throughout the years, and Carney's been wherever else. Also, I guess there's another thing, like this Trump tariff talk is pretty crazy, and things can be adjusted. However, our rules and regulations, red tape here in Canada is huge. So having the tariffs on top of that is even bigger. So we got lots of problems. And then I guess this thing you were talking about with one of your earlier callers about this, Carney has to go in front of a board in the States because they've been watching him. And that doesn't, I don't know. I mean, Trump's sitting there saying, hey, drill, baby, drill. Carney is nowhere near that. He doesn't want to do that.
Okay. All right.
Also, French, not knowing French and that stuff does not help the man's case. Hopefully all the people and far and wide can hear this message. Rob, how was your vacation?
My vacation was uneventful, but fine. And it was great to tune everything out for a little while. But I'll tell you what, I'm all wrapped up in the election campaign, and it's been great to be back at it this week and keeping everyone up to date and hearing everyone's thoughts on the election campaign. 1 month from today, by the way, 1 month from today, it'll all be over. We'll all be, I guess, watching the returns. I'll probably be all over the radio that night as the results come in. But today is March 28th, and Election Day is April 28th, so just 1 month to go. And I look forward to bringing you all the information and hearing everyone's thoughts on it. Bernie in Mississauga on the Friday free-for-all Talkback. Bernie, hi there. You're on the air. What's on your mind today, Bernie?
Rob?
Good, Bernie.
Yeah,
thanks.
Good. I heard a conversation reported from Trump and Carney, and it's like two oligarchs getting together, and they're going to be in charge of the hen house when they all get over their tantrums. I'd like to give a point out to Jagmeet Singh. I think he's the champion of the working class in this country, and I think for the majority of the people in this country that are about 60% or 70% are just working their stiffs. If you really take after the vote of Jagmeet Singh for these last couple of years, dental care, and workers' rights, and kids to school and everything. So I think that people in this country, if they're going to coordinate Carney, they better really someone on the left that can do fighting for the conscience of this country.
Well, why? If that's the case, then Bernie, then let me ask you: why are so many NDP supporters fleeing and voting for the Liberals? What's going on there?
They got scared by Trump, but Trump is nothing to be scared of. He's only an oligarch. He's going to do something best for the capitalists. Carney will do best for the capitalists, and Poilievre will do best for the capitalists.
If you are the Prime Minister at the end of all...
ordinary people is Jagmeet Singh, and he's proven it.
All right. Okay, Bernie, thank you. All right. Fair enough. It's looking pretty bleak right now for the New Democrats. I mean, one poll has them at 6% and on track to win 6 seats, which isn't even official party status in the House of Commons if they were only to win 6 seats. I mean, there's a whole month left. There's a couple of debates to go, but it's pretty bleak for the New Democrats. They don't have a plane. They could only campaign wherever the bus will go. So it's pretty tough for them right now. Valerie in Calgary, you're on the air, Valerie. Hi there.
Good day, Rob. I wanted to, first of all, thank you for how you responded to a caller on Monday, and I know it was a while ago, but the caller said that he wasn't going to vote for Carney because Carney was a billionaire and was a World Economic Forum puppet. And you gracefully challenged him on that. And I would like to just mention that Carney doesn't come from money. His parents were teachers. The fact that he's a millionaire, and I'm not saying I'm going to vote Liberal, but the fact that he's a millionaire is because he worked hard. The fact that he has been a speaker at the World Economic Forum, which is a non-governmental, non-profit organization. He's got contacts with economists and politicians all over the world.
Yeah, he's a very well-connected guy. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I think he's more involved in the World Economic Forum than that. You know, he was on some committees at the World Economic Forum, right? He was more than just an invited speaker to the World Economic.
Exactly, and thank you for bringing that point up, because it's, all due respect to being a conservative leaning, who is the best choice for us in the short term to steer us economically? And it's not Poilievre's fault per se that he doesn't have this expertise, but it's all about the research. It's every Canadian has to vote, and we have to do our research before we vote. Every vote counts. And are we voting for the future, or are we voting against the past? Like the lady before the news, with all due respect, blame the Liberals. To some extent, yeah. Justin Trudeau was as disdainful and superior and smug against Trump as much as his father was against Nixon, and look where that got us. Really, the Liberal Party should have forced Trump to resign the day of the election.
So you sound like somebody who was kind of leaning conservative, but now that Carney's there, you're thinking Carney may be better than Poilievre. Is that a fair enough assessment of your thinking right now?
At this point, but I'm still doing my research because it was, I mean, it was, gotta love the Conservatives. I mean, it was Mulroney who brought in NAFTA, for heaven's sakes. So, and the Liberals have not done a good job over the last 10 years. And ideologically, I agree. I'm a conservative by nature, and I would love to support the Conservative Party ideologically, but not only is it the level of expertise of our Prime Minister, but also right now, do we really have the time to bring in all new cabinet ministers who've been out of government for 10 years versus people like Melanie Joly, who know their jobs and are really, really good at it. So I'm still doing my research,
okay.
And I want to vote for
some people, I think some people may take you to task on that. The last part that you said there, and are really, really good at it. Would you say Melanie Joly has been a good foreign affairs minister? Sean Fraser is running again. Was he a good housing minister?
Actually, yeah, you got me on that one.
Okay.
You got me on Sean Fraser. I do, but the point I'm making is that
Francois Philippe Champagne, I know he's not the industry minister anymore, but he's the finance minister now, but he was the industry minister when they're pouring, $50 billion plus into all of these EV factories. There's one in Quebec that the federal government put billions of dollars into that thing, and it's bust. It's bust. The company is bankrupt now.
Mm-hmm. So,
right? Was that a great strategy? Is that someone who should be?
No, it wasn't. But what it reminds
But he's
me
part of the Carney team.
What it reminds me of is when you're doing your pro and con list, that I have to do more research. We all have to do our research and then vote for the future, not against the past. And I know.
Okay.
So
thank you, Valerie. I got to run. Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. You call back anytime. Friday Free for All Talk Back, hour number 1. Full hour still ahead. Lots of time to take your call. Very busy so far. Very busy news day as well. Let's go to Joe in Halifax on the Friday Free for All Talk Back. Hi, Joe. What's on your mind?
Hi, Rob. How are you?
I'm good, Joe. Thank you.
Excellent. I'd like to talk to you about the election and
sure.
Not to say anything bad about your adoring fan, Sharon, but I'm just kind of curious. I haven't voted Liberal. I'm a 60-year-old. I'm a pensioner. Haven't worked for a while. Things are getting tough and everything else, but at least I have a place to live, food in the fridge, and I'm getting by. You know what I mean? So
sure.
I haven't voted Liberal. I haven't voted PC in the last 30, 35 years, going on 40. Maybe I just haven't had any great faith in any of their leaders that they have.
Fair enough.
Quickly talking about the leaders, okay?
Yeah.
From Andrew Scheer to, young Trudeau,
Aaron
and
O'Toole.
all these people, they just, I really had no faith in them, okay? Now, I'm just kind of curious. This year, I'm going to be voting Liberal, okay?
Okay.
I can't
all right.
any PC guy because of the fact that I've only heard lies from them for the last 25 years. They've only spewed lies and lies and lies. That's all they ever had. I love Elizabeth May. I think she's one of the best politicians we have in this country. Unfortunately, I can't vote for her as Prime Minister and not vote for her party. Do you know what I mean? So she's out.
Okay.
Jagmeet Singh, unfortunately, he's just a waste of time and energy. Bring back Jack Layton, and then maybe we have somebody to vote for. God rest his soul. But I'm just curious, what's your opinion about the leaders that we have? I'd like to hear from you in that sense. You know what I mean? I hear from all
well,
these...
I wouldn't say that the Liberals have any kind of monopoly on the truth. Mark Carney denied that he was involved, for example, in moving the headquarters of Brookfield Asset Management out of Toronto to New York City, when there's a paper trail and public documents, because shares that are traded on the stock exchange, it has to announce all of these things to shareholders. And his names are on the documents saying we're moving to New York City. And yet he stood there in front of a news reporter and said, I was gone. I wasn't there at the time. He said that he was part of the Department of Finance that helped Paul Martin balance the budget. Well, the cutbacks that balanced the budget when Chrétien was prime minister and Paul Martin was the finance minister, that happened in the mid-1990s. The heavy lifting was done, say, 95 to 1997, 1998, and there was a lot of pain. 45,000 government workers were let go. They laid off 8,000 people from the CBC. Mark Carney wasn't around for any of that. Mark Carney was in university at the time and didn't join the Department of Finance until I think it was 2004. Something like that. He doesn't have he has a difficult time telling the truth. And you're saying, well, I can't vote for the other guy because they, all they do is lie all the time. I would remind you as well with Jody Wilson-Raybould, the former Attorney General and Justice Minister who blew the lid off the SNC Lavalin scandal and then was kicked out of the Liberal Party by Justin Trudeau. She wrote a book about how astonished she was and how easy it was for Justin Trudeau to lie. And I can quote from the book how she thought Justin Trudeau, when she first got into politics, was an honest person. Quote, when in truth, he would so casually lie to the public and think he could get away with it. That's hour number 1 of Talkback. I'm Rob Snow. Hour number 2 just ahead, right after the latest breaking news.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Friday free-for-all Talkback hour. Hour number 2. Welcome to it. I'm Rob Snow. Great to hear from you again today. The election campaign, I mean, that's the big story. Been the biggest story all week. It's going to be the biggest story for the next month. And a month from today, it'll all be over. We are 1 month removed from Election Day, which will be April 28th. Just 1 month to go. And I'll make this a Friday thing during the election campaign. I'll just ask you, who won the week? Who won the week? I mean, there are only 5 weeks. It's a short campaign, 36 days. That's it. That's all. I mean, if you're working on one of these campaigns, you want to win all the weeks. You don't want to have any bad weeks. So 1 week is down. First week, who won the week? The Liberals, the Conservatives, the NDP. Who won the week? That's one question we can throw out there. 1-833-668-2577. But we'll go wherever you want to take it. Kyle in Listowel. Thank you, Kyle.
How are you, my friend? All right. So
I'm good,
quick.
Kyle.
All right. So it's very funny. You got 2 liberals talking to each other today. You got Trump, the liberal of the United States of America, and you got Carney, the liberal Prime Minister of Canada. Like, is this a joke here? Like, are we living in a different world? Like, you got Trump, and I don't know how to understand how this guy's a right winger. If he loves Carney, he's bowing down to Carney. Now he's influencing the Canadian election and influencing how we should vote, and pushing that Canadians should be voting for Carney and things like that. Like, I don't know. I think Canada, if we go Liberal for another 4 years, I think you're going to see something crazy go on in Canada, and and people are going to be shaking their head. Why? Well, go out and vote for the Conservatives, because we need the Conservatives.
Okay.
I don't want Mark Carney, who, some lady, I think it was me that she was referring to about, what's wrong with the WEF that Carney's part of. Well, it's elitist influence. There's a globalist agenda, wealth disparity. So, the working class, if you're okay with, having a billionaire or these people that work for billionaires telling you how to run your life when you're struggling to get by, just think about that, because, how has that been for the last 4 years, or how's that been under the Liberal government? And, people are saying that, they're really good. They did everything so well. None of them have done anything really well. Karina Gould, Melanie Jolie, all those guys are under Carney now. They were just as bad under Trudeau. So I want to say that, but Anyways,
okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Okay.
Thanks a lot, my friend.
Okay, all right. Okay. Yeah, junior hockey playoffs are starting as well. And, the baseball season started yesterday. Holy smokes, not a great start for the Blue Jays yesterday. I watched a little bit of that game after work. Final score 12-2. Holy smokes, not a great start for the Jays. Anchor in Calgary, you're up next, Anchor. Go ahead.
Hi, Rob. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you, Anchor. What's on your mind today?
Well, a lot.
A lot. Okay. Well, we don't have a lot of time, so let's get right to it here.
I'm going to try to keep it succinct. I'm not hearing any strategies, Rob. All I hear is tactics.
Okay.
Whatever Trump says today becomes the topic, becomes the policy. Oh, I'm going to drop the interest rate by 1%. Oh, the other guy, I'm going to do it 2.2. It's like we really need to start thinking about, okay, what is the long-term game? What kind of Canada we want to build and want to be.
Okay.
So my question to what I'm saddened about is we have come to this same sort of thing with like U.S. We only have two real parties. And none of those have done any good work. And, you basically have to choose the lesser of the evils. I'm not a conservative. I'm not a liberal. I want some common sense people that can actually drive the agenda forward. I would hate to see a liberal government back again. But at the same time, Poilievre, I don't know what he stands for. I mean, he keeps saying he has the same thing that the Democrats have, the Trump derangement syndrome. Oh, Trump this, Trump that, this. What are they going to do? But my question to your listeners.
Well, I think did we not hear a little bit of that from Mr. Poilievre when he spoke in Nanaimo today? David has the tape when he talked about tariffs. He hopes there's no tariffs, is what he said. And then he went on to outline what he thinks should be happening with the Canadian economy, with a heavy focus on maximizing the potential of Canada's natural resources. Let's roll the tape here, Dave. Go ahead.
That's the goal that we should all be working towards. And my goal will be to make Canada, regardless of what the Americans do, this has all been a wake-up call for us. By blocking pipelines and LNG plants and slow-rolling resource projects, capping our oil and gas sector, the Liberals have made us too reliant on the Americans. That will end. My government will repeal the entire carbon tax, the energy cap, the anti-pipeline law, C-69. We will bring the hundreds of billions of dollars back to our economy, and we will start selling between Canadians and overseas so that we are stronger, self-reliant, sovereign.
There you go. Okay. So, he's talking about more interprovincial trade, more trade with other countries. Isn't that everything that we're hearing from Mr. Carney as well?
No, I hear that. And that's what I'm saying. All great points.
Okay.
But because some of them are long-term planning. I love that. But what I don't hear back is, okay, tariff is top of mind today. Let's imagine Trump goes away. Okay, none of this is there now.
Okay.
What, we go back to square zero? Or let's imagine Trump becomes a new normal. Then what? We're gonna we need a Canada strategy, and I'm sure between the Liberals and Conservatives, we know who is a better one. At least for me, Conservatives are. But the question I really want to pose to our leaders and to everybody is: yesterday topic was sovereignty, right? So really, the question is: do we all sincerely, we need to answer this question, do we really believe in one Canada, one people, one land format, or are we just living in provinces? Why I say that is we're still fighting Alberta oil, auto industry in Ontario, Quebec this, Quebec that. Do you ever hear of Jeddah oil, Mecca oil, or Texas oil? It's all about the country. So if we do really believe in one country, one format, one piece, one everything, then the resources they belong to everybody. So Quebec.
Well, that's not the arrangement of our confederation.
Why not? This is what I'm trying to say. Is why? To me, that's the fundamental question. I, as an immigrant, I signed a deal with Canada. I didn't sign a deal with Alberta. I signed a deal with Canada. I came to Canada. What I'm trying to say here is we need. This is the fundamental question, and nobody talks about that. And then
which
we
is
have
not
Quebec
to say
again
that.
talking about.
Yeah.
Quebec is again talking about separation. Okay, let them go. You know,
Let them go?
we would
Okay.
save 20 to 30% cost right away.
Okay. Well, Quebec is not the only province that's talking about separation. They're talking about separation in your province too. Should we just let you go?
No, but this is what I'm trying to say. We keep talking about the provincial. What about Canada? All I'm trying to say is...
I gotcha, Anchor. I'm out of time. I got to run. I'm sorry. That was very generous. Thank you for your call, as always. Pat in Cambridge up next on the Friday Free For All Talkback Hour. Hi there, Pat.
Hi, Rob. I think the most important thing for Canada is to have a leader that really prioritizes the reduction of bureaucracy, reduction of red tape, reduction of taxes, and really creates a business-friendly environment. I think a lot of your listeners are pointing to Mr. Carney's experience during the 2008 financial crisis, his experience at the Bank of Canada, as factors that would make him an ideal leader. But I would certainly question that. I think before the 2008 financial crisis, the Conservative government paid down approximately $40 billion in federal debt, and it reduced Canada's debt to GDP to one of the lowest among the G7 nations. And this really created an environment where it provided the government fiscal room to maneuver when a crisis hit. We've always had a strong banking system. During the crisis, the Harper government introduced the Economic Action Plan. It was around $50 billion that was targeted at specific industries and infrastructure and tax relief.
I remember that.
And and I think lastly, during that time, you had Jim Flaherty, who was finance minister, that I think provided steady oversight, and he had a clear exit strategy to get us back to a balanced budget by 2015. So for me, I would really credit Mr. Harper as the individual that got us through that specific crisis. With respect to Mr. Carney's tenure at the Bank of Canada, you'll see that inflation spiked to just over 11% in the UK while he was there, while other countries like France and Italy were around 5 or 8%. He created a pension fund crisis where he advocated for pension funds to accumulate higher risk assets, and then he had to bail them out. UK economic growth, living standards, productivity all declined during his tenure there.
Well, how much of that because just hold on. Just let me interrupt. Okay. I'm just going to play devil's advocate here. Just, to get kind of both sides out there. I mean, you spent the first half of your argument talking about how, he was at the Bank of Canada while Prime Minister Harper was doing this along with the finance minister, fiscal policy versus, say, monetary policy. How much of the problems that the UK faced and is still facing, how much of that was the creation of monetary policy versus, say, the fiscal policy of a Tory government that was eventually defeated?
Yeah, on the interest rate, that's completely the Bank of Canada's responsibility. On the pension fund, allowing higher risk assets, that's completely the Bank of England's issue. You can make an argument that economic growth, living standards, and productivity were the government's issue, so he wasn't directly involved.
Mm-hmm.
But he did politicize his role during Brexit, engaging in these politics of fear, which breached his role of neutrality. And then lastly, he was also the economic advisor of the Liberal government in Canada since 2020. And Canada has the second lowest growth per capita in the OECD at 1.4%. But if you look, countries like Poland and Hungary had governments that specifically prioritized economic growth, and they have growth rates of 30-40% higher than Canada. So when Canadians can't afford a home or Canadians are living paycheck to paycheck, it's because of government policies that have not prioritized economic growth. Now, if you ask the Liberal government, they're going to say that they have, but it's through this lens that only gets you 1.4% growth because of the added bureaucracy, because of the added red tape. And I don't personally think that we should reward a party that is giving Canadians a 2016 standard of living in 2025.
Okay.
Thanks.
Very thorough argument today. maybe somebody will want to poke some holes in it as we make our way through this hour of Talkback. I thank you for your call today. We'll stop here. Be right back on the phone lines. More of your calls. Hey, let's go to Peter out in Langley, British Columbia today. Hello, Peter.
Hello there.
Hi, Peter. What's on your mind?
There's a lot on my mind. The first thing is I've heard, we heard Poilievre's speech just a few minutes ago, and I've also heard a couple of listeners this morning making comments that the Liberals for the last 10 years made us dependent on the USA, and that is entirely false.
It's entirely false.
Entirely false. Canada has become dependent on the USA for the last 70 years. It's been one spineless political leader after another that will do anything in order to keep the trade going, and they just always just accepted the USA pushing us around and dictating to us how things are going to be. It's not the last 10 years. It's like 70 years that this has been going on. And I noticed that I'm a little bit surprised that nobody has talked about Carney's speech from yesterday. He said in his speech that the old relationship, I'm just making it short, the old relationship between Canada and USA is...
Oh, yes, I'm glad you brought that up. We actually have the clip of that. It's very quick.
You should play that.
Yeah, let's play it right now.
Okay.
Yeah, David's got it here.
We will need to ensure that Canada can succeed in a drastically different world. The old relationship we had with the United States, based on deepening integration of our economies and tight security and military cooperations, is over. What exactly the United States does next is unclear. But what is clear is that we, as Canadians, have agency. We have power. We are masters in our own home. Nous sommes maîtres chez nous.
Nous sommes maîtres chez nous. Okay. I mean, that's what the clip you're talking about, right?
Yes, that's the exact clip I was talking about. And to me, that was earth-shaking for Canada to stand up and say, the old relationship is over. That's just earth-shaking to me, and nobody seems to have commented on that. So now we're seeing that Trump has softened his stance, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, we had a deal. They broke the deal. Trump himself is willing to break any deal that he makes with anybody in the whole world. So how do we make a new deal with them? And
I would frame the question: why would we, with this president especially? Why would you, in good faith, think he would keep his end of the bargain?
Well, absolutely not. I think he's a petulant child, and I think that the next fight he has with Melania, he's going to take it out on some other country. And the thing is that we can't think of just Trump, because they hired Bush, in the last one, and I thought that was as dumb as it gets. Now they've hired Trump. Who's the next Yahoo that's going to come in there? Things could be worse, and I think it's all important for Canada to secure some ability to be able to be not self-dependent, because everybody needs to be interdependent with other countries, but we need to get off the teat of the American economy. We don't need to throw it away.
Again, I mean, both Mr. Poilievre and Mr. Carney are talking in those terms. That we need to do more to diversify the Canadian economy, so it is not so reliant on the United States. Okay, I have to stop here.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
And down the stretch they come for Talkback. Let's go to William in Calgary. Hello, William.
Hello.
Hi, William.
How are you doing today?
I'm great, William. What's on your mind?
Good. I just wanted to talk about the election and this and that. I just wonder what Canadians, did they want a leader that they've had for the last 8 years that's done nothing but destroy our country? That's my point. I don't get it.
Okay.
We need change. We need change, period.
Well, the Liberals are going to say, we have changed. Mr. Trudeau's not here anymore, okay? And his policies are gone too. No more carbon tax. No more increase to the capital gains inclusion rate. We're going to give you a tax cut. All of these things, right? So
you believe what Carney says? You think that he's going to drop the tax? He hasn't even said he's going to. The carbon tax.
Well, they've already on the consumer carbon tax. They've essentially, it's not going to go up in April. It's been moved to zero, right?
Yeah. So you think the Liberals should go?
But what he has done, the difference between, and I said this was going to be the case, the difference between Poilievre and Carney when it comes to the carbon tax is that we have two carbon taxes. You had that consumer carbon tax. And, Carney says he's getting rid of that. But then you have the large industrial emitter program that works on carbon credits, right? Now, Poilievre has said he would get rid of that, too. He doesn't want any kind of carbon tax on Canadian consumers or Canadian industry. Now, people can debate, is that the best policy to have? Whatever. Mr. Carney has said he would actually increase the amount paid by large emitters, what his former environment minister, Guilbeault, calls big polluters. Big polluters, not big business, employing a lot of people, but big polluters. Okay?
The trickle down on that is who pays? The Canadians pay.
Well, of course. Well, of course there'll be a cost to that, right? Okay. I just wanted to point out the policy differences there, sir, because it is a good point that you raised there. Yeah.
I think we need change, and I think the young people in this world, the middle class, the hardworking, the ones that are going to have to pay that debt down for the rest of their lives, should listen up and go vote Conservative.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's been an interesting week. I'll say that. Pierre Poilievre, thank you for your call, by the way. I mean, Pierre Poilievre, he can't escape the fact that he's actually getting grief from people who would normally be on his side. I'm not really sure what to make of that. You've got stories. In the Toronto Star, of all places, like a more liberal newspaper you will not find than the Toronto Star, reporting internal polling numbers from people who work for Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario. It's no secret that I guess the two men don't get along very well, or whatever the case. But if you know some of the personalities behind the scenes, whether it's Poilievre or Ford, historically, it's been a lot of the same people, because these are the people who are power players in the conservative movement in Canada. When you have Corey Teneycke, who was an advisor to Stephen Harper, helped start Sun News, helped Doug Ford win 3 elections. We have him talking to the Toronto Star, showing polling numbers to the Toronto Star that have the Conservatives behind by 15 points. And Teneycke is screaming from the rooftops on political podcasts saying that Poilievre is blowing this and could get blown out because he's not delivering the right message. That's quite something. Let's face it, you have 123 seats up for grabs in Ontario. 123 seats. You need 172 for a majority. If the Conservatives are 15 points behind in Ontario, everybody may as well go to bed early on election night. It'd be over by the time they count the votes in Ontario. But then you look at the rallies. People will say, you look at the rallies. He goes to Hamilton, 4,000 people show up. He goes to Surrey, British Columbia, 5,000 people show up. Hard to know what to make of the campaign. Some people are saying, the campaign is in free fall, but you have other polls, like the Main Street poll out this week, has the Conservatives at 40% in the polls. The last time the Conservatives were 40% in the polls, if they got 40% on election night, that's something they haven't done in 37 years. Since 1988, it's quite something to say, a campaign is in free fall. You get polling at 40%. Best polling number since 1988 in the re-election of Mulroney. Let's go to Tom in Kitchener. I'm just saying it's not over, is what I would say. Hi, Tom.
Yeah, you're right. It's not over. The thing is, if Trump is going to go with wanting to attain Canada, they have a plan, and we've just barely seen it now. And everybody is going to the United States, talking to the janitors, talking to the night cleaners, and you're not talking directly to the people that have the rights. So if he has a plan, we're in trouble because our guys aren't handling how it's supposed to be. And the other thing is, I was going to say, number one in Canada, it's immigration. They have to send those 4 million people back. We can't afford them. You're looking at, if this happens,
okay,
you're looking at 50% unemployment.
No, we're not. But nevertheless, I will say, Mr. Poilievre has raised this at his rallies, in his speeches. He has said that immigration has to be tied to the social capacity. That's my term, the social capacity of the country. You need to house people. People need doctors. Children need to go to school. All of this stuff. Thank you for your call, Tom. We really haven't heard much from Mr. Carney on what his immigration policy would be. All we really know is that he turfed Mr. Trudeau's immigration minister, Mark Miller, from his cabinet. Mark Miller's not in the cabinet anymore. He was the last immigration minister in a Liberal government. I'm Rob Snow. We'll be back. More of your calls. Lots of time to fit you in here, folks, at 1-833-668-2577. This is News Radio. Let's go to Guy in Calgary up next on the Friday Free for All Talkback. What's on your mind? Hello.
How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for the call. What do you want to talk about?
I think this is falling right into Trump's plan to he's making the Liberals look good now because he knows that makes Canada weak, and then it's going to upset the Western Canada, and it'll be easier for him to just move in and do what he wants to do.
And what do you think he wants to do?
Well, he said it quite a while, make it the 51 state.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you think he's trying to he's trying to divide the country along regional lines, east and west?
Absolutely.
Kind of like a divide and conquer.
Yes. Yeah. Just like if he wanted to take over a business, he'd move in and cause an uproar in it and try to shake things up in the company and then take it over.
Okay. Well, he certainly spoke positively about the call that he had with Mark today. We have the audio of it. This was Trump at the White House today, asked about it. Let's play that again, David. Go ahead.
The Prime Minister says that they will be implementing retaliatory tariffs. You said if that were to happen, that you would be responding with large-scale tariffs. Will you be following through with that promise?
Well, absolutely. But we had a very good conversation. Mark called me today at 10 o'clock. We put out a statement. We had a very, very good talk. He's going through an election now, and we'll see what happens. But we have Liberation Day, as you know, on April 2nd, and I'm not referring to Canada, but many countries have taken advantage of us, the likes of which nobody even thought was possible for many, many decades, And, that has to stop. We're going to end up with a very good relationship with Canada and a lot of the other countries. Some we probably won't. It won't be so. But we had a very good talk, the Prime Minister and myself, and I think things are going to work out very well between Canada and the United States. Yeah.
Okay. And you think that's all part of some grand master plan because Eastern Canada will vote Liberal and Western Canada will not be really angry about the outcome of the election if it's a Liberal government, and that will provide an opening for the Americans.
The art of the deal.
The art of the deal. Okay.
He's playing us.
He's playing us. Okay.
Absolutely.
Very interesting that he says, in his Truth Social statement, we agree on many things and we'll be meeting immediately after the upcoming election. which kind of assumes that Mark Carney's going to win the election, right?
Like Trump is hard to figure out, right?
Oh yeah.
Like everybody can agree with that. He's a smart man. I don't agree with him, but he's a smart man, and he knows how to. He knows that if he can get Carney in and the Liberals, it's going to make Canada really weak.
Okay. All right. I'm going to wrap up our call there. I want to move along. Thank you, Guy, for your call. Joselito, also calling from Calgary today. Hi there. You're on the air. What do you want to talk about?
Yeah, what's up, Ron? Rob, thank you for...
Everything is good. Good to hear from you again. What's on your mind?
Yeah. Well, the hot issue right now is the election thing and everything, but regarding Mr. Trump, I think it's just, kind of a smoke screen to model up the real issue here in Canada.
Okay.
Because, because it's just like a monkey wrench thrown in the arena just to model up the things. Because we go trace back 10 years ago and realize the situation we're in right now. Where are we now? So on those 10 years that have passed, you can just imagine the issue.
So you say, Joselito, you say it's a smoke screen. It's a smoke screen. Are you saying it's a smoke screen from the Liberal record? Is that what you're saying? Of the last, 9.5 years?
Basically on almost everything, because as I said before in my previous call to you, Mr. Carney is just at the right place at the right time, and everything goes into plan. I don't know what's the plan, but the way I see things here, it's just and then just as you have said, Mr. Trump already segue something about something good will be between Canada and U.S. Upon after election, assuming that Mr. Carney will, by default, the winner in this federal election. So all those things you read between the lines, and you can figure out something is, something is working behind the scenes, and I hope that it's for the benefit of all Canadians, because I've been here for so long, and I have been struggling all my life here. I'm an immigrant, first generation immigrant, and I've seen a lot of good and bad things in Canada. But Canada is good, and I want it to be a self-sufficient, maybe a superpower one day, and be self-reliant. And we got a lot of resources here. It's just a matter of good management and cooperation within provinces. That's the thing.
Very good. All right, Joselito, we have to wrap up our conversation there for today. We're a little tight on time, but I thank you for your call. You call back again someday. Yeah, winding things down for the week here for Talkback. Let's go to Mike in Calgary. Probably the last call of the week here. Hi, Mike.
How are you today? I know you're well. First-time caller, but I
appreciate that, Mike.
Today.
Okay.
I born and raised in Calgary, and I'm old enough to have voted, unfortunately, for Pierre Elliott Trudeau when I first voted when I was 18. So that's what's mixed, but that's beside me. I'm a conservative, but one thing we need to talk about more is reciprocal tariffs are the wrong way to go. Few people have talked about it. We need to put export taxes on oil, potash, Premier Smith, and Mo. Got to get on the program. In fact, that energy one. We put reciprocal tariffs, and we're going to hurt Canadians. These ones are going to hit, especially the potash. I'm also into the farming business. That will hurt the Midwest farmers big time.
Right.
And again, not us. I don't want to pay for it.
Well, I guess the trick is how do you get Premier Smith to ever go along with an export tax on oil shipments to the United States? How do you get Premier Mo on side with, say, an export tax on shipments of potash to the United States? How do you convince them that that's the right thing to do? Because they're totally opposed to that.
Watch the news a little bit, and you'll see that 90% of the potash for the Midwest states comes from Saskatchewan. They got no other choice. The oil, look at the refineries. Like, there's so much stuff in the news that if you can't see that, some nice news reporter needs to ask them the right question and tell them to go back to school. Because some of the
but the thing is that they're going to be opposed. They're going to be opposed to a liberal government in Ottawa, if this is how it is indeed structured as it was structured under the National Energy Program. A liberal government in Ottawa collecting a tax on a provincial resource and the money going to Ottawa and spent in the best interests of Ottawa, which are probably going to be opposed to the interests of Alberta and Saskatchewan. It's going to be a tough sell for both of those premiers. Now, if there could be some kind of agreement that whatever revenue is collected from an export tax goes back to the provinces on their commodities, maybe there's room for a deal there.
There's some deal, but remember, we've seen how unfair the East and the transfer tax worked for years. And I don't have to agree that that's the best way to go. But somewhere along the road, Trump is putting tariffs on stuff that's good for him. Now, we need to put export taxes that's good for us and is actually going to hurt them. And when their price of gas goes up $1 a liter or a gallon or something, and there's the only way it's going to work with him. Punishing us is the wrong way to go. That's my thoughts today.
I appreciate your thoughts. Appreciate you being a first-time caller. Hope you'll contribute more to our show. Thank you to everyone who called this week. You're certainly paying attention to it and all wrapped up in the election. We'll get right back at it on Monday. Enjoy your weekend. The day is far from over. Lots of news still to come, including a news conference from Mark Carney in about a half an hour from now. This is News Radio.